Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record?
Sure, my name is Dr. Chris Condon, that's C-O-N-D-O-N.
You said you're a doctor. What do you do specifically?
I'm a family physician. I have my own medical practice in Steelton.
And where do you practice?
Condon Family Medical Center.
And how long have you been in the field of medicine?
25 years now.
Have you received any accolades for the work you've done in the field?
Yes, I've received the Best Doctor Award in the Penn Regional Gazette 6 times.
Well then, Dr. Condon, I want to focus specifically on why exactly you're here today. Do you know why?
Yes, I do. It's my understanding that a former patient of mine named Bobby Daly got into an accident with Sam Shields.
Let's talk about those two individuals one at a time. How are you familiar with Bobby Daly?
Well, I know Bobby Daly primarily as a patient of mine. Mr. Daly came to treat with me on 4 separate occasions over a period of about 9 months, following a significant head trauma that he suffered as a result of an attack in a parking lot.
And what about Sam Shields? How are you familiar with Sam Shields?
I really don't know Sam Shields very well. The limit of my knowledge of Mr. Shields is that I know that he was in a car accident with Mr. Daly.
Dr. Condon, you touched for a moment on Mr. Daly being attacked. Could you elaborate on that? What do you know about it?
I know that he was in a parking lot and that a group of individuals assaulted him. I know that he sustained multiple blows to the head repeatedly, that he fractured his eye socket because of those blows to the head, and that he suffered very severe injuries.
And was it for these injuries that Mr. Daly sought treatment with you?
Yes, that's exactly why he came to me.
Did you treat Mr. Daly?
I did, yes.
And did you keep records or logs of the treatments with Mr. Daly that you had?
Yes, as a doctor, I always keep records of each visit that I have with the patient. That way I can look back on those before their next visit with me.
Well, Dr. Condon, could you do me a favor and turn to tab 3?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm there.
Well, what exactly are we looking at in tab 3?
Tab 3 is my first patient report with Mr. Daly, which happened on June 22nd, 2015.
And what are the rest of the pages in tab 3?
The second one is my second visit with Mr. Daly, which is on July 7th, 2015. The one after that is my third visit, which was on August 7, 2015. And the fourth and final one is my March 7th, 2016 visit with Mr. Daly.
Your Honor, at this time, may I publish a copy of what's already in evidence as C1, the first medical record?
Yes, you may.
And may Dr. Condon step down?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Condon, remind us what we're looking at here.
Sure, so this is my first patient visit with Mr. Daly, which happened on June 22nd, 2015.
And you told us about the injuries that Mr. Daly was reporting to you. What specific symptoms in this first visit did Mr. Daly say he had?
Well, I indicate them right here. He was suffering from headache, loss of memory, loss of focus, loss of concentration, pressure in the head, and also a neck injury.
At this point, what were his symptoms consistent with in this first visit?
They were consistent with a concussion.
Doctor, did you consider the possibility of a seizure disorder?
Yes, I did, because some of these symptoms here, specifically the headaches, loss of memory, loss of focus, and loss of concentration, they can also be indicative of a seizure disorder, but I thought at that time that a concussion was far more likely, given the fact that I knew he had been hit repeatedly in the head.
Were you able to then diagnose Mr. Daly with a seizure disorder at this time?
No, I was not.
Had Mr. Daly ever told you that he'd suffered a seizure to his knowledge?
No, he didn't tell me anything like that at all.
Did Mr. Daly tell you to his knowledge that he had a seizure disorder?
No, he did not.
Dr. Condon, you said you couldn't diagnose him with a seizure disorder. Why not?
Well, for a couple reasons. First of all, it's very, very difficult to diagnose someone with a seizure disorder unless you have a witness who witnessed the event, just like Dr. Leonard said on the stand today, simply because the person who has the seizure, they're unconscious at the time, and so you can't rely on their account of the events.
All right, well, doctor, you told us all about his symptoms. Did you prescribe him any medication for those symptoms?
Yes, sir. I prescribed gabapentin for its off-label uses.
Well, let's take those two ideas one at a time. First, what's gabapentin?
Gabapentin is a drug that treats a variety of symptoms, and its FDA-approved label is to treat post-shingles pain and also is an anticonvulsant for patients with epileptic seizures.
And you said you prescribed it off-label. What does it mean to prescribe medicine off-label?
Well, when pharmaceutical companies, they produce these drugs, they just produce them to treat a variety of different symptoms. But you have to pick just one label to register it under. So while gabapentin treats a variety of different symptoms, it's just registered under the label of an anticonvulsant drug.
And in this first visit you had with Mr. Daly, besides prescribing the medication, did you tell him to do anything else?
Yes, I advised him to stop driving after this visit.
Why?
Well, gabapentin, while it does help with all the symptoms that he was suffering from, it can also lead to a number of complications which aren't at all advisable when you're going to drive. And the FDA label that I'm familiar with says that you shouldn't allow patients who are taking gabapentin to operate heavy machinery or drive until the drug adjusts fully to their system.
Thank you, Dr. Condon. Your Honor, at this time, may I publish C2, his second patient visit?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Condon, can I set that behind you? Sure. Thank you. Remind us again what we're looking at now.
Sure, so this is the second visit that I had with Mr. Daly, which was on July 7th, 2015.
What symptoms did Mr. Daly report to you in this second visit?
He reported to me more of the same during this visit. I noted down right here, once again, he had headaches, memory loss, blurred vision.
What did these symptoms in the second visit indicate to you?
These were all still symptoms that to me seemed to be indicative and conclusive or suggestive of a concussive disorder.
At this point, Dr. Condon, did you rule out a seizure disorder?
No, sir, I didn't. I wanted to keep an open mind and continue to monitor him across the course of my visits with Mr. Daly.
Were you able to diagnose him with a seizure disorder?
No, sir, I wasn't.
All right, doctor, you told us in your first visit that you told him not to drive. What about the second visit?
The second visit, I gave the same advisement simply because this was only 2 weeks after that first visit with him, so the gabapentin was still very new in his system, and I still wanted to give time to see how he would react to gabapentin before he started driving.
Thank you, doctor. Your Honor, at this time, may I publish C3, a copy of the third record?
You may.
Thank you. Dr. Condon, if you want to help me set this behind you, just like the last one. And doctor, tell us what we're looking at with this one.
This is my third visit with Mr. Daly.
And when was that?
That was on August 7th, 2015.
In this third visit, did Mr. Daly report any new symptoms to you?
Yes, he did. He reported to me the same symptoms that he had before, but he also reported to me a change in symptoms. Specifically, he reported that he was suffering from instances of significant memory loss, where he was losing track of time for longer periods than he had before that.
Could you elaborate on that? What do you mean when you say significant periods of memory loss?
Just an extended period of memory loss. Just for instance, he reported to me one time he was sitting up on the couch, and the next thing he knew, he was lying down on the couch or near the couch. He wasn't really clear, and he had lost track of time in between those two instances.
And what did his symptoms that you note in this third visit lead you to believe?
They led me to believe still that these were instances of a post-concussive disorder. Memory loss is actually a very common symptom of concussions.
Well, did you rule out the possibility of a seizure disorder in this third visit?
No, sir. I was still keeping an open mind. In fact, I considered diagnostic testing at this point, but decided that I would continue to monitor his symptoms and see if that was necessary.
Well, to be clear, would you have done diagnostic testing if his symptoms persisted into the fourth visit?
Yes, I absolutely would have.
Well, all right, doctor. Were you able then to diagnose Mr. Daly with the seizure disorder in this third visit?
No, for the same reasons. He was still reporting to me all symptoms that were all indicative of a concussive disorder, and I still didn't have that verified account from a witness who had said that they had seen him collapse or anything like that at all.
All right, doctor. In your first and second visits then, you told Mr. Daly to not drive. What about the third?
I told him the same thing during the third. The reason being is that I actually increased the dosage of his gabapentin here, and the gabapentin, the increased dosage, I was worried that that might also compromise the system. So I said during this third visit, hold off on driving for the time being.
Thank you, Dr. Condon. Your Honor, at this time, may I publish C4, the fourth record?
You may.
Thank you. Do the same thing on this one, doctor. Thank Okay, doctor, what are we looking at?
This is my fourth and final visit with Mr. Daly. I only treated with him 4 times total, and it happened on March 7th, 2016.
Could you tell us a little bit about Mr. Daly's symptoms during this 4th visit?
Well, I was actually very pleased during this 4th visit. His symptoms, as I note here, had actually improved across the board. They hadn't completely gone away in all categories, but the memory loss incidents he reported, they had gone down, the headaches had gone down, the irritability and the other mood disorders, they had all improved across the board.
Doctor, what did this indicate to you?
This indicated to me still that we were looking at post-concussive syndrome and that he had responded to my increases of dosage in gabapentin for the off-label effects of treating headaches, irritability, mood disorders, and loss of concentration.
Then, doctor, in this 4th visit, were you able to rule out the possibility of a seizure disorder?
Yes, I was at this point.
Why is that?
Because I had monitored his symptoms for 9 months, and they were all consistent with a post-concussive disorder, which again, I thought was much, much more likely than a seizure disorder, because I knew he had sustained multiple blows to the head, and that's very typical when you have patients who have concussions. I also didn't have any kind of verified account in 9 months of treating him of Mr. Daly ever having any kind of collapse or loss in motor function from any witnesses. And for those reasons, I just wasn't able to conclude that he had any kind of seizure at any point in those 9 months.
And then, doctor, looking at the current medications, was Mr. Daly continuing with gabapentin even after this 4th visit?
Yes, he was.
Thank you, Dr. Condon. You can retake your seat.
Thank you.
Then, Dr. Condon, I want to spend some time talking about the statutes you're alleged to have violated today.
Sure.
Are you familiar with the statute that requires you to report a patient that you know has had a seizure?
I am, yes.
Are you familiar, Dr. Condon, with the statute that requires you to report a patient that you know has suffered a seizure disorder?
Yes, very familiar.
Dr. Condon, have you been sitting here throughout the course of the trial,
Yes, I have.
including opening statements?
Yes, I heard those as well.
Dr. Condon, did you hear Ms. Coley say that the Steelton statute was that you have to report if you suspect a patient has a seizure disorder?
Yes, I heard that, and it's wrong. It's completely incorrect. That's not what the statute says.
What do you mean? What does the statute say?
The statute says that if a doctor has an affirmative belief that a patient has had a seizure, at that point they have to report the patient, not just if they suspect it.
Dr. Condon, were you aware of these statutes at the time you were treating Mr. Daly?
I was, yes.
Did you report Mr. Daly to the Department of Transportation?
No, I didn't.
Have you ever reported a patient to the Department of Transportation?
No, because I've never had the need to.
Focusing on Mr. Daly then, why didn't you report him to the Department of Transportation?
I didn't report him because all of his symptoms were pointing in the other direction. They were pointing straight at post-concussive disorder, and I didn't have any reason to have the affirmative belief that he was suffering from a seizure, and for that reason, I didn't have any duty to report.
Dr. Condon, would you have reported Mr. Daly if you knew that he had a seizure disorder?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you have reported Mr. Daly if you knew that he had a seizure?
Absolutely.
Dr. Condon, what's your personal belief about reporting patients to the Department of Transportation?
I don't think that doctors should have that duty simply because it requires a lot of guesswork, but I would never let that personal belief affect my medical and legal duty, which I understand is to report patients who do have seizures.
Thank you, Dr. Condon. Your Honor, at this time, I have nothing further.